What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be ranking all 90 brawlers in the game right now, from the very worst all the way up to the very best in a tier list. So these balance changes, pretty record breaking. There was so many nerfs, over 40 balance changes. A lot of these really focused on nerfing a lot of the broken brawlers in the meta. The last meta was one of the most chaotic I've ever seen, with so many broken hypercharges, gadgets. This meta, this time around, I think is pretty balanced. I don't think there's a broken brawler. Dare I jinx it? But let's jump into the F tiers. Starting off with the worst brawler in the game, Doug. Doug is absolutely the worst brawler in the game. There's not even any good maps for him right now in the rank rotation or anything. He needs a hypercharge, he needs a rework, he needs something. Bonnie is remaining in the F tier because, again, nothing really happened to her. She hasn't received any form of buff, which makes me believe either they're planning on making a broken hypercharge for her, or she's going to receive a rework. One of these two. Surely she's going to remain in the F tier. Next in the F tier, we have Clancy, and the poor lobster was absolutely killed, just like Mo previously. He received way too many nerfs, with so many different brawlers in the meta receiving hypercharges, so it's just gradually falling down, and he's not usable. And lastly, in the F tier, we have Pam. Pam used to always be a solid brawler about 6 months ago, but for the past 6 months, she's been in a D tier and lower, and finally, she's going to be in the F tier because she just farms too many people's supers. She's going to get a hypercharge pretty soon. This might bump her up a little bit. Now, moving on to the D tier brawlers, most of these are pretty poor. They're going to be like really niche brawlers into certain compositions or on certain game modes. And we're going to start off with Lily. So Lily was pretty much killed with the gadget rework, because you can't just spam out vanish gadgets, especially because before you could pop your vanish gadget, and then when you re-enter the world, you basically can pop another one straight away. You can't do that now. It's over 20 seconds per cooldown, so it's pretty much killed her. Chuck is next in the D tier, and Chuck is only viable in Heist, but I've been saying for the longest time now, I've started to see him drop down in the meta because people are learning how to counter him. The way to counter him is just by ignoring him and going other high damage brawlers and just beat him in a base race. I'm just not seeing him viable elsewhere. Next in the D tier, we have Ems. She received a slight buff to her hypercharge rate. It's not really impacted her in pro play whatsoever, mainly because there's just too many brawlers that can outrange Ems pretty easily. She doesn't pack the same punch that she used to have in terms of damage. For the casuals, she's probably like an A tier brawler, but for the pros, definitely D tier. She's not been seen in competitive play for over a year. So in the D tier, we have BB. So the same fate for BB, because for the casuals, she's probably like an A tier brawler. The hypercharge is really good, but pro players won't allow BB to get close to them because she just has no range and no way to close down the gap, to be honest. She's only really usable maybe on pit stop heist, and that's it. So in the D tier, we have Jackie. So she's starting to fall down just because there's just better hypercharges in the game right now. There's too many tank counters, and she has very limited range, and with the gadget rework as well, she hasn't really improved in the meta. Pros aren't playing any Jackie. In the D tier, we have Jessie. So we've seen ever since she got a hypercharge, she was near like the A tier, right? And she's just been dropping every single meta because, let's face it, hypercharge mechanically is just really poor. It's not that great. It charges pretty quickly, but it's just far too many better control brawlers out there, and she doesn't really counter tanks that well anymore. In the D tier, we have a Bull. So I thought the Stomper gadget was going to be really good with this rework, but let's face it, Bull is still just a walking super totem. He's so easy to kill. Even if he confirms the kill with Stomp onto someone else, he's got to get cleaned up by another brawler, and he's okay in Heist, but again, only really on those base race maps like Pit Stop. Next in the D tier, we have Colt. So Colt has completely fallen off the meta right now. He already was starting to be on my radar because he was only good in Heist, but then I started to see a couple of months ago pros weren't even playing Colt anymore in Heist. And now in ranked, of course, Heist is in rotation, but still pros aren't playing much of him. He's still okay if you need that big damage dealer, but I'm just thinking a 1v1, he's just too easy to predict. And again, there's just better, more impactful hypercharges in the game, so he's falling down. For the D tier, we have Edgar. So Edgar received 2 buffs to his gadget cooldowns, but let's face it, that did absolutely nothing to him. It's just made him like at least usable. Before this, he was completely unusable, but I'm not really seeing any Edgar in pro play whatsoever. Again, there's only really slight few use cases for him. He's just really fallen off. For the D tier, we have Fang. So another noob stomper. For the casuals, he's going to seem a lot better, but the pros aren't using Fang and haven't used him for such a long time. The hypercharge it just takes way too long to get, like 5 supers to get, which is bizarre when you think of other purple buttons are just way better. For example, even Mortis takes 3 supers to get. He can just team wipe through walls as well, and he's just a lot more, I don't know, a lot more reliable than Fang. He's just never used anymore. Next up in the D tier, we have Grom. So I know this is going to anger a lot of people because he recently got a hypercharge, but in pro play, I'm not really seeing too much Grom. I feel like he could move into like a C tier brawler, maybe, because he's now a viable late pick, but me personally, I'm just not really vibing with Grom. Again, the casuals are going to love his hypercharge because they're going to be able to cycle through his hypercharge like crazy, and his hypercharge super is actually really, really good, but again, this is a pro tier list, and I just don't think pros will feed Grom Hypercharge. You're not going to get that by the end of the bounty or knockout game, so what is the point in even having it? So in the D tier, we have a Miko. So Miko, again, is too much of a niche brawler in the meta. He's only really good when you're thinking of like a triple counter situation where the opponent is using like 2 snipers and a thrower, for example. But even then, a lot of snipers do have like a knockback or some way of escaping a Miko. It's just too hard to play and too frustrating to really make work in this meta. Next up in the D tier, I've gone with Gale. So Gale used to be a team wipe machine, especially with his Hypercharge, but that got heavily nerfed a long time ago. I predicted his fall off very quickly. People are starting to realize just how bad he is in the meta. He's only really good on an open map now, like open zone, with his slow start power. He isn't a good enough tank counter, so he isn't a good enough brawler in the meta. In the D tier, we have a Rosa, so I'm not seeing any use case for her in this meta. Ever since they nerfed her grow light gadget, well, even with it being a 10-second cooldown, I don't think she was actually picked too much. It was a brief amount of time where she seemed really good, but it's just far too many counters for her in this meta, so D tier is where she's at. Next up in the D tier, we have Shelly. So Shelly has really fallen from grace because I don't really see any use case for her in the meta. Maybe in the previous one, I've started to see a little bit more of her because there's just so much Poco tankiness going on, but now with the meta being a lot more balanced and other tank counters just being better, I don't see any Shelly. Lastly, in the D tier, we have Willow. So Willow has not really received much love ever since I've released, to be honest, and now I'm just starting to see her getting worse and worse as other brawlers are receiving hypercharges. She's getting a hypercharge pretty soon, I believe, so maybe this makes her a little bit better, but I can't really see it. I just think too many aggressive brawlers can counter her too easily. So now we're going to be moving on to the C tier brawlers. So most of these are pretty decent. I'll just say slightly below average, but they can definitely have its use cases. For example, Meg. So Meg with the hypercharge is starting to become a little bit of a better brawler. I was really going to put her quite high on the tier list if they didn't nerf her hypercharge rate literally immediately. I can't believe they even did that. I know it cycled really fast, but she's been a D tier brawler for a long time. So yes, she's going to be good in like ranked and like brawl hockey and other situations, hot zone for example, but the pros still probably won't use Meg too much. Next one in C tier, I've gone with Spike. So Spike could be like a DC tier brawler. I'm not even seeing the noobs pick Spike too much in this meta, but it's still Spike. It's still pretty reliable. He's got some consistent damage output. So yeah, he'll always be floating around a C/D tier. Next one in C tier, we have Charlie. So she's risen quite a lot in the meta. I don't think she's anywhere near her previous state, but that one buff that she receives, she needs one less hit to get her super. I think it's just made her feel a little bit better, especially at countering those tanks. She can't get ran down as easily. Now she can cycle through hypercharges a lot more effectively as well, but I still think there's just far better brawlers in the meta, so C tier is where she's at. In the C tier, we have Rust. So ever since his hypercharge came out, it's not really made any impact for him in the meta. It's just too awkward and too hard to get consistent value out of. He also really lacks the damage, and too many brawlers can just run him down. Next up in the C tier, we have Sam. So a brief amount of time, Sam was probably the best brawler in the game because his hypercharge was that broken, but they heavily nerfed it, and it's kind of impossible to charge in the game right now. So kind of similar to Fang, to be honest, but the purple button is still a team wipe machine. I hope they're fixing this hypercharge mechanically so that instead of whenever you hit someone, maybe it returns to you when it reaches its maximum distance, or if you hit a wall, for example. I think that could be a good way to balance it, and then we could be reducing the hypercharge rate. But for now, it's too hard to charge, so it's got to be C tier. Next one is C tier, we have Dynamite. So since the gadget rework, he has definitely dropped down in the meta. This is because you can't just spam out your stun gadget like crazy, whilst there's other brawlers in the meta that can just spam green button a little bit quicker. It's too prone to this aggressive meta as well. I don't really see much Dynamite anymore. Next up in the C tier, I've gone with Primo. So Primo is a fantastic tank counter and a great counter to some of the meta brawlers right now, but he's only really viable in like Heist, Brawl, maybe a few other situations to counter Frank in like Hot Zone, but yeah, it's only really good for that reason. So in the C tier, we've got Maisie, and no, I don't just hate Maisie. It is because NA overrate Maisie, and somehow she was supposed to be S tier or A tier in previous metas. Well, this whole time, Maisie's had pretty much a 0 use rate in monthly finals, in EMEA, in East Asia, and even with the crazy unpredictable meta that we saw last month, she still wasn't picked, even to counter like Poco compositions, etc. I've just not really seen her pop off anytime in pro play. So I was right, okay, I won this war. Maisie has been C tier for months now. So in the C tier, we have Nanny. So the reason why I put her on C tier, she's probably like A or S tier in Knockout and Bounty, but she's not really usable anywhere else right now. And then when you think about it, even in those game modes, you only really pick Nanny to counter the opponent if they use Piper or just 2 snipers in a row, but still good players can counter Nani with like a Jean, Max, or whatever else. So Nani's not as good as she used to be. So in the CT, we have Tara. So she received a slight buff to her supercharge rate, and I don't really think that made much of a difference to her in the meta, mainly because her gadgets don't have the same, use case as years ago, because those pets could tank a whole lot, but now she still feels a little bit too vulnerable. She's got a bit better, but I don't really see her being too good. For the CT, we've got Sprout. So Sprout has some really, really good use cases on like Bell's Rocket Knockout and some other situations, but I'm still thinking other throws are better, especially since we've got like Juju, we've got Tick, we've also got the likes of Gray at the top of the meta that is just too good against the likes of Sprout. So for the CT, we have a Buzz, so he's just stayed here for a very long time, because again, a good Buzz player can definitely make pop-off plays, but there's just too many brawlers that can knock him back and just make him really hard to play. And he's only really good if you use the longer stun star power against like tanks, maybe. Can be a good counter to like Melody. So we're starting to see a bit more variety with Buzz in terms of countering brawlers. But again, it's very difficult to make work. Next, we're going to see we've got Eve. So when her hypercharge came out, she was like an A-tier brawler. She was played everywhere. So the map pool changes have definitely influenced her fall off a bit. But I think just in general, it's pretty hard to cycle through to this hypercharge, especially against good players. And there's a lot of brawlers in the meta that just counter her pets too easily. So when you see we have Shade. So I'm feeling like he's going to be the underrated brawler in this meta, because if you watch Saitampo on Shade, you'd think Shade is an S-tier brawler in the game. So maybe we might see a bit of a rise to him in the future, but for now I don't really see him whatsoever in ranked. People might be sleeping on him though. Next, we're going to see we've got Draco, so I'm starting to see him fall down the meta again. I think it's got to be because his last stand gadget has such a big cooldown, and before, what you did with Draco is you just waste those 3-4 gadgets as much as possible in the early game, so then by the time you've run out of gadgets, it doesn't matter because you've got such a healthy lead in hot zone, etc. But now those moments are just too hard to make work. Those pop-off moments, other brawlers just have better gadgets, hypercharges, etc. that just counter him too hard. Lastly, in the CT, we have Crow. So Crow is only good in heist because of his hypercharge, dealing 50% for heist safe. You guys already know that. And outside of that, I don't really see a whole lot of Crow. There's maybe like some really niche moments, but still, he just does pitiful damage and people can just run all over him. So now we're going to be moving on to the B-tier brawlers. So most of these are just average or maybe a bit above average. And there's quite a lot of them in this balanced meta. So the first one is going to be Bo. So this is going to be my hot take. I think most people probably put Bo in the C tier, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and say he's B tier because his hype charge rate was buffed quite a bit, and you're able to cycle through to those mines a lot more effectively. I think he's really good in hot zone. He's a good gem carrier right now. I think people need to stop sleeping on the bot. So in the B tier, we have Amber. So Amber last meta was absolutely terrible because there's just too much going on for her. Now the meta's a bit more balanced. She's going to rise a bit more, but still without a hypercharge. I think with the gadget rework as well, she's definitely fallen down. Her use rate has completely plummeted. So in the B tier, we have Otis. So Otis is such a solid, underrated brawler. He always will be. In the draft, I think people just completely forget about him because on those maps with really long lanes or just a lot of grass, his vision gear can be really helpful, and then the hypercharge on top of that, he's a great tank counter. Overall, really consistent. I like it. So with the B tier, we've got Kenji. So Kenji, I don't know what about him right now. Again, I think the gadget rework has actually made him worse. Mainly again because you could just blindly just spam your green button early game before the gadget rework and just overwhelmingly kill opponents and get a quick goal. But now you've got to pick your moments a lot more carefully. So again, with other assassins getting hypercharges, in the brawlers like Ollie just kind of taking over Kenji, I'm not really seeing him a whole lot. So in the B tier, we've got Kit. So Kit is always going to be that cheesy brawler, and as long as there's a lot of brawlers that synergize well with Kit in the meta, he's always going to be pretty good. Also, there's only really like a couple of big counters out there like Cordelius, like Charlie, and they're not really like the strongest picks in the meta. So a knockout Kit's always going to be good, and then those cheesy strategies, Kit can always work. So with a B tier, we have Cordelius. So honestly, I'm starting to see Cordelius drop off quite a fair bit. I'm not even seeing him to counter the likes of Melody and other brawlers like that, but for that sole reason, because the hypercharge is to confirm kill, and a good Cordelius can always pop off, he's going to be in and around the B/C tier, but definitely not higher. In the B tier, we've got Surge. So Surge has kind of been in the B tier, the balance stage, for a little while now. His hypercharge got nerfed quite heavily, and that's definitely toned him down a lot. And he also just doesn't have the HP to really go in the way that he used to. There's also a lot of Surge counters in the meta right now, like Mr. P, for example, like Janet. even some tanks. Ollie can overrule him too much. Meeple, etc. I think it's a bit too squishy for this meta. Some of the B tier, we've got Sandy. So Sandy is an excellent brawler in the meta and always will be, because even brawlers that counter Sandy, it can just feed Sandy's super, hypercharges, and then you can turn around the game. I am seeing his usage drop down a little bit though, mainly because he probably doesn't have the DPS to keep up, but he's still a good pick. The B tier, we've got Leon. So Leon probably is in around the B/C tier. He did receive a big nerf to his gadget, but overall, there's a lot of game modes where he can work, and Lollipop Drop is seriously just that good. It's just allowed him to cycle even more supers and make more of an impact, so I think B's fair. So the B tier, we've got Squeak. So Squeak received a nerf to his wind-up gadget, and that's definitely turned him down a little bit, but I'm still seeing a lot of Squeak right now, and it seems to be working all of the time. Maybe people just underrated Squeak this whole time. Like, he's a good knockout brawler, he's good in hot zone, and wind-up is still pretty good. Residue gadget's still good. His hypercharge can be pretty useful as well. I like Squeak. So in the B tier, we've got Byron. So Byron's kind of the forgotten brawler in the meta right now because he's still pretty good, but I just think there's other support brawlers that can outclass him right now. The likes of, Poco, Barry, Max, even the likes of Gray can be a support brawler with a teleport. There's just better brawlers out there, but that doesn't go to say that Byron's still a good brawler. Next one to B tier, we've got Mortis. So I definitely underrated Mortis a little bit in my other tier list. He did receive a big nerf to his hypercharge rate, but I still think because his hypercharge is that good mechanically, he has to be B tier still. He's absolutely busted. So you can just go in like crazy. It doesn't matter how many times you die, because once you get that purple button, you will team up and you will change the game. So for that reason, B tier still. In B tier, we've got the Twins. So the Twins just aren't really making any impact in the meta right now. I'm not seeing them whatsoever. Maybe they might even be a C tier brawler finally. This is mainly because, again, there's just way better brawlers with hypercharges that make a bigger impact. Once the Twins get a hypercharge, I'm scared they'll probably be broken. But for now, they're definitely making its way down the meta. In the B tier, we have Hank. So finally, we have a period right here where Hank isn't either the best brawler in the game, like on release or when his hypercharge got released, or he's not in the F tier, like pretty much where he's been his whole career. So I think B tier is a safe spot for him. I think people are actually underrating his hypercharge now. It's not as bad as people make out. Of course, on a really open map, it's probably not going to hit the same, but I've tried it out a fair bit. It's still pretty decent. Again, I think he might be in his underrated period again. I don't think it's as bad as people are making out. So in the B tier, we have Colette. So for as long as Heist is in the game, Colette's always going to be at least a B tier brawler because of how much damage she can deal to the Heist safe. Her hypercharge allows her to counter so many tanks as well. So for that reason, she's still B. Next with the B tier, we've got Griff. So that short-lived, a little bit of a messer for him previously. It is just gone completely. I'm not really seeing much Griff anymore. Even with the likes of B, I just don't see much Griff. But if I was to put Griff in a C tier, I'll just get killed in the comments. So I think B is fair for now. So in B tier, we've got Penny. So Penny has definitely fallen down in the last few metas. About 3 or 4 months ago, she was like the most played brawler in pro play, but with balance changes, nerfing her hypercharge rate, and the meta changing around her, it's definitely shifted her down. Again, for most casuals, she's still going to seem like a good brawler, but pros know how to counter her too easily. She can just get ran all over, especially with Poco, Berry compositions, Ollie. There's just too much aggression for Penny to deal with. She's probably only good in hot zone right now. Next on the B tier, we've got Daryl. So Daryl is a solid B tier brawler right now. Again, one of those forgotten brawlers, but he still serves his purpose really well. He can be a great late pick in game modes like Brawl. He can be an amazing pick and knockout, especially against those snipers. And his hypercharge is pretty bad, but at least it gives him some stat boost. He's still a decent brawler. So with the B tier, we've got Rico. So finally, he isn't as oppressive as he's been for a very long time. That was due to the fact that you could spam out his multiple launcher gadget like crazy and just confirm so many kills. That received a big gadget cooldown with the gadget rework, and then the nerfs to it previously, and then a hypercharge rate nerf on top of that as well. In pro play, Rico's not really played too much. He's still a bit of a noob stomper, but he's definitely in the B tier. In the B tier, we've got 8-bit. So 8-bit's just solid right now in this tier because he's a decent gem carry, especially when you're looking for one that's not vulnerable against those tanks. He's good in heist. He can be good in situations in like bounty paired with a sniper and a thrower. He has a lot of use case. I'm disappointed by his hypercharge though. It's not that great, but just because he's a great tank counter and he's a safe gem carrier, he's in the B tier. B tier, we have Tick. So Tick's always going to be in and around here because he's like the king of knockout and bounty, where he's going to outrange pretty much every thrower, and then he's still somewhat safe against some assassins in knockout and bounty anyways. Outside of that, he's definitely not, but yeah, he's going to remain B tier. So with B tier, we've got Barley, so he's definitely going to start dropping down in the meta. My predictions, he's probably going to go down to the C tier maybe next time if you don't receive a buff, just because I'm not really seeing the same impact that I did a couple of months ago. There's just better brawlers out there that just overwhelm him a bit too much. Next up in the B tier, we have Lola. So for the sole reason that she's got a purple button, I think it's bumped it up a little bit in the meta. Her hypercharge isn't useful whatsoever in my opinion though. It's just the stat boosts that are pretty good. I mean, the big plus side is that maybe if you can put it behind you and it not get killed for a while, you get more healing and a little bit more damage. But yeah, the hypercharge isn't anything crazy, so B tier is an absolute maximal. So in B tier, we've got Brock. So Brock is still a solid B tier brawler. He didn't receive a nerf to his gadget, the one that breaks open walls, which is pretty good for him because that's made him a viable option again in knockout and bounty. But still, I find there's too many counters for him in those game modes, so he's only really good on a select few maps. Next to the B tier, we've got Nita. So if you've watched my YouTube streams, I am never playing Nita again. But for the most part, Nita can be a consistent brawler. You just got to make sure there's a lot of grass and then she can work. The pro players seem to love Nita, but most of the time it's got to be paired with like Max or something that can support her, especially against tough matchups. The reason why she's B though is because she cycles through hyper charges really fast. Other than that, I don't really like her too much, to be honest. And lastly in the B tier, we have Finks. So I know what you're going to say. You said Finks was the top 3 brawler in the game. Okay, I was trying for some outlandish opinions, and Finks just didn't land. It seemed like a lot of people were liking Finks. I just think personally after trying him a lot myself, I don't think he's that good of a brawler, really. I just think he needs more of an open map. I think he's only good on like, you know, open hot zone maps, for example, or really open gem grab maps. He's a lot better in the meta, but I just don't think he's anywhere near the top 10. Now we're going to be moving on to your A tier brawlers. So these are just a fantastic option, at least on a couple of game modes. And we're going to be starting off with Pearl. So Pearl's always going to be that underrated brawler, which people just, for every reason, don't place her in the A tier on their tier list because she's solid in knockout and bounty. You can never go wrong with her. She might be boring to play, but when it comes down to the tournaments, everyone is playing Pearl in those game modes. So in the A tier, we've got Gus. So Gus was actually falling down a lot in the previous meta because there was just far too many broken brawlers. And now with all of them nerfed, he's just been able to get a little bit better. So he's just good in like knockout, bounty, and a few other situations. So in the A tier, we've got Mandy. So this is one of the first times I believe Mandy is up here, and that's because of her broken hypercharge. I know I thought the hypercharge wasn't going to be good. That's because the mutation was just terrible in my opinion, but it's because of the stat boost with the hypercharge. You can one-shot so many brawlers thanks to the additional attack damage that she receives. I think it's kind of crazy. They shouldn't have even buffed this really, maybe like 5% damage. I think it's like at least 20, maybe 25%, which is just bizarre. And then of course if you clip a couple of people with it, you can cycle through to another one. I don't know how it didn't get nerfed in the last update. So knockout and bounty, she's absolutely insane. And low-key, she might be usable elsewhere too. In the A tier, we've got Piper, so I still think she's a really consistent brawler in the meta. She's not been played an absolute ton in pro play, but I think because she's so good in bounty and knockout, always a great pick when it comes down to, you know, it's down to you whether you hit your shots or not, right? If you're a good Piper player, you're going to absolutely pop off and carry a team. There's still a lot of use case for her. But in A tier, we've got RT. So there's still the same type of brawlers in this A tier that have been here for months and months, and RT is still one of them in my opinion because you can never go wrong with him in the draft. You can always go with him in knockout and bounty and maybe even a few different scenarios as well. It's because he pairs so well with so many different brawlers, and since they've reworked his gadget so you get your super instantly, it's also made him a great defensive brawler against all of the aggro going on. So he's really good on like parallel plays. So until they nerf that gadget, I think he's going to remain A tier forever. Next up in the A tier, we've got Buster. So he's gone from the B to the A tier, mainly because of his hypercharge. I know it's not a crazy hypercharge super, but I've explained it before. He gets a hypercharge super every single round in knockout. Of course, that's going to help him out. It's going to give him additional stat boost. It's going to give him speed, damage, whatever else he needs, shield. And that's definitely going to make a big impact because he can run to the enemies quicker, gadget them, and get kills. I think it's a great option right now. In the A tier, I've went with Gene. So Gene is still a great brawler in the meta. Knockout, bounty, gem grab. He's so good. They nerfed his Vengeful Spirit gadgets, which has impacted him a little bit, but he's still one of the go-to brawlers pretty much everywhere. So in the A tier, we've got Berry. So even with the slight nerf to him, could have made a bigger impact in my opinion, but I'm still seeing a lot of Berry in the hot zone, just a lot of cheesy strategies going on, and that's mainly because you can cycle through to your super still pretty fast, and you're still getting hype charge pretty fast. So for that reason, he's still easily in the A tier. A tier, we have Ash. So he received no balance changes, even though he's a pretty strong brawler in the meta. He's good in the right hands. The reason why Ash isn't higher because he's only good in like Brawl, Gem Grab, maybe in a few other use cases, but more so it's got to be like a bushier map. But yeah, the hypercharge only taking 2 supers to get is a big reason why he's so good. So in 8 we have Bell. So Bell is always this super consistent brawler where you can never really go wrong with going Bell. If you need a long range brawler in heist, you can go Bell. If you need a solid gem carrier, she's not the best, but you can still go Bell. You can go Bell and Knockout and Bounty, great counter to like June compositions, anyone clumping up, and a good Bell will always get a lot of consistent damage, so she's still A tier. So in 8 tier, we've got Frank, so even with the hypercharge rate nerf, he's still easily one of the better brawlers in the game. This is due to the fact that he can get his hypercharge through just taking damage, so if you pair him with like a Poco, Byron, or a Berry, then he's easily just gonna farm hypercharge like crazy, and still with stat boost, the big shield boost he gets is the big reason why he's so good, because so many brawlers just haven't got the damage potential to even kill him. So in 8 tier, we have Angelo, so with all the brawlers around him receiving nerfs, he's indirectly got better in the meta again. So Knockout and Bounty, I'm using Angelo everywhere. He's so annoying. His Pierce gadget as well didn't get nerfed, and it's just such a good gadget since recent rework, because you could just spam those 4K through walls like crazy. The pros are loving Angelo. The next up in 8 tier, I went with Mo, so this is after getting opinions from a lot of different people. Most people don't think that Mo is near the S tier, which is probably fair. I'm just slightly biased, maybe because I look like Mo, I sound like Mo, but I'm also just pretty much undefeated and ranked with Mo, winning every single game. I think he's fully back in the meta. I think A tier is a safe spot for him though. So in 8 tier, we went with Carl. So Carl was S tier in the previous meta because you could spam out his heat ejector gadget like crazy, just dealing insane amounts of damage. NA was really loving the Carl. I think it's definitely toned him down a bit though, since that little bit of a nerf. It could maybe still be S tier. I still think Carl as standalone brawler is a little bit too easy to counter. The amount of damage he can provide right now, on top of his hypercharge, is just insane. So in 8 tier, I went with Lou. I'm starting to see a little bit less of Lou right now. He only received 1 hit nerf to his supercharge rate, but that can make a bigger impact the longer the game goes on, because more tanks can run him down a lot more effectively. He's still a great counter to a lot of different tanks, and like Hot Zone, for example, Brawl. But again, I'm starting to see him played a lot less. Next up in 8 tier, we've got B. So even with a recent nerf, I don't think it really did too much to B. Maybe she could still be S tier. But Rattled Hive is just too spammy still. The hypercharge is really good as well. I think if this was more of a ranked tier list, she'd definitely be in S tier because she's insane at Brawl Hockey. But because it's got to factor in heist as well, I think 8 is fair. In 8 tier, we've got Poco, so he isn't as broken as before because the protective tune gadget cooldown was just bizarre last update. It got nerfed quite heavily, but it is still really strong. The fact they can completely counter out Ollie, one of the best brawlers in the game, makes him really viable. He's great in Hot Zone. He's just great paired with so many brawlers. He definitely is an 8 tier brawler. Next up in 8 tier, we've got Melody, so the absolute best players in the game probably would still say that Melody is an S tier brawler, even since the hypercharge rate nerf. I still think 8 is solid for her though. She's just really good in the right hands. She can just deal an insane amount of damage. Her hypercharge is still absolutely broken. She's good in Brawl, she's good in gem grab, she's good in Hot Zone, she's good as a late pick into snipers. Again, it's down to the user. If you're a good Melody, she's going to be one of the best brawlers in the game. Next up in 8 tier, I went with Mr. P. So the consensus is that a lot of people thought the hypercharge nerf killed Mr. P, and it just didn't. It really didn't. It's still like, it's not broken, but it's still really good. It's just the thing with Mr. P is that you've got to put this turret in a more advanced position rather than just all the way in the back, and you've got to get a lot more value out of it. They didn't nerf his hypercharge rate. They only slightly nerfed the decaying of it. It's still going to take a lot of brawlers, like at least 2 pieces of ammo to destroy it, and then there's another one that's spawning in your face. So Mr. P is still a meta brawler right now. So with an 8 tier, I went with Chester. So a lot of people would disagree with this, but I think he's absolutely an 8 tier brawler in the meta. The hypercharge is absolutely dumb broken. The biggest downside is that it takes over 3 supers to charge up, but the fact that you can one-shot pretty much every brawler in the game is absolutely insane to me. And then people were sleeping on the Candy Beans gadget as well. The meta's been crying out for a decent lane tank counter, and Chester is finally here. Lastly, in the 8 tier, I went with Janet. So if it was me, I would just put Janet straight in the S tier because she's pretty annoying. But I will say, since the hypercharge rate nerf, she isn't as effective as before because she can't just get a free kill literally all the time now. It's that brief period, but I can definitely feel that I can take her down. So now we're going to be moving on to the S tier brawlers. So these are the best of the best. I actually thought it was pretty hard to find any S tier brawlers in this meta, believe it or not, just because I don't think there's really a broken brawler out there. But let's start off with Juju. So Juju is still an S tier brawler in the meta. She didn't receive, well, she's received a slight nerf to her Elementalist gadget, but that's not going to do enough. For her to fall out of the meta, we're going to have to do a big nerf to Gree, her pet. or else she's always going to be really good because she's a thrower that can counter tanks and then just have so much versatility. She's always going to remain S tier. Next up in S tier, I went with Gray, and this is my opinion because I think Gray is broken in ranked. I'm just abusing him so much and banning him so much as well because of the gadget rework. Before, you only had like 3 or 4 walking canes, and once you wasted all of those, then it's really hard to cycle through to your super. But now every 20 seconds you've got one, and then that can help you charge your next super. Your hypercharge is really effective as well. He's like the best brawler in knockout bounty right now. He's really solid in hot zone. He's good in other situations as well. I think people are sleeping on him. Brawl hockey in ranked, he's insane. I think he has to be an S tier brawler. I'm moving into the best 5 brawlers in the game right now. At number 5, I'm going to go with Max. So this is a brawler that most people just completely sleep on, but you can always go Max in the meta, especially since all of the nerfs. I think she's got even better. I think it's because of the hypercharge. The hypercharge can just make you completely take over the map. And it's also that Max is just so good against everything. So moving on to the 4th best brawler in the game right now, I went with Stu. Stu is absolutely insane still in the meta. He received a nerf to his speed zone gadget so that it now decays much faster. But they didn't nerf his hypercharge rate, and it's just bizarre because his hypercharge rate is insane. You can cycle through to multiple of them, and he's literally unstoppable with his hypercharge. You can go from A to B across the map within a split second and then fully heal up with his gas to heal star power. So until they nerf that, he's still going to remain S tier. I'm moving into the best 3 brawlers in the game. At number 3, we're going to go with Ollie. So Ollie could probably be the best brawler in the game, but just because in ranks, you can definitely counter him out. I'm just going to say he's top 3 for now, but again, you can interchange his top 3. So the reason why Ollie's so good, he's one of the tankiest brawlers in the game. He's got the tank trait, so that can charge his super. His super is a dash mechanic, which for the tankiest brawler in the game to have a dash mechanic is insane. You've then got a gadget on top of that that jumps over the walls and extends his hypnotize range, which if you land your super and gadget combination, it's 3.5 seconds of hypnotizing the opponent and just making these turnaround plays. Again, if you play a lot of Ollie, you'll soon realize just how broken he is. Even with 2 nerfs in the last update, I think all of the balance changes around him has allowed him to thrive even more. Now moving into the 2nd best brawler in the game right now, I'm going to go with Meeple. I think Meeple is so incredibly strong, kind of on the cusp of broken. I just think he's so good into everything. So again, the players that are playing Meeple, and if you're playing random Brawl, you're going to think he's the worst brawler in the game because there's so many Mortis players, etc. But if you're playing ranked and you're playing at a high enough level above Masters, you're going to quickly realize Meeple is the go-to brawler. Both his gadgets are so incredibly strong. His super is so good because, of course, he can shoot through walls. It's such a crazy strong mechanic. And his main attack is auto-aim. You literally cannot miss his main attack for the most part. It deals some insane damage as well. I think people sleep on Meeple like crazy. In pro play where it's a lot more calculated, he's always going to work out. He absolutely is an S tier brawler in the meta. So now moving into the best brawler in the game right now, I'm going to go ahead and say it's Lumi. So this opinion might change when she comes out in ranked tomorrow, but I've just got this feeling about her that she's actually a lot stronger than a lot of people are believing. So I thought when I first tested her out on the dev build, I thought she was the best brawler in the game, but with the crazy meta going on, I don't think she could really thrive. Now all of these brawlers have got nerfed. I think this is a much more balanced meta, so it allows a new brawler like Lumi to come in and take over the meta. So just her as a brawler is insane. I just think she has a lot of control with her main attack, and I think it takes a little while to get used to how she shoots out her main attack, how to get the most damage, etc. But once people get the hang of that, she's going to be a really good brawler. Also, you've got her freeze gadget, which is mini loose supers, which is so much control as well. Her super is really good for confirming kills. I think she's just going to be an excellent brawler. The biggest counter to her is going to be her HP and range, but good players are going to be able to work away that. I think her just attack spam and just having constant control with her main attack is going to make her the reason why she's going to be the best brawler in the game, in my opinion. Again, this is more of a prediction because it's hard to tell with a new brawler, especially since the ladder rework, because the level of games when you play ladder, for like brawler, when you play for trophies, it's just terrible right now. It's absolutely awful. So normally I've got to wait a week after release, try it out in ranked, and then I normally know. But I think it's going to be S tier. But it's going to be the tier list on your screen right here. Let me know whether you agree, disagree. What I'm going to go ahead and say is this is a really, really balanced meta. There's of course some stronger brawlers, but there's nothing obscenely broken unless Lumi breaks the game, which I'm really, really happy about. So big props to Adrian for nerfing a lot of his brawlers. The balance changes should have came a lot sooner, but I'm glad they've came now, and the meta is definitely feeling really nice. So yeah, this is, again, the meta hasn't actually changed too much. It's just these meta brawlers aren't as toxic anymore. They're still really good. But yeah, that's going to be it, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.